Hello, how are you all doing? Thanks for checking in to see this little virtual lecture that I'm going to put together. This is for the Thursday, March 15th virtual class. Yes, I am still immobile, and I did have an MRI, so I'm just waiting to hear back from the doctor to see what trouble I'm in for, and to get an assessment on that. And I'll just keep you guys posted as that develops. So next week is spring break, and then we'll reconvene virtually or in the classroom again next week, the week after that, depending on what happens. And like I said, I'll keep you posted. As of right now, I'm pretty much immobile. So I think I mentioned in one of the announcements that I sent that we should be mentally prepared to buckle down into the virtual environment for the rest of this semester, which is actually fairly short. After spring break, I think we have about 4 weeks. So I just kind of prepare for that. It's not really how I had planned the semester, but this is what happens when life gets in the way. So today, what I wanted to do is I have my David Foster Wallace book here. I wanted to talk about the high points. I usually discuss David Foster Wallace in a discussion format because it's really not a lecturable book for a couple of reasons that we'll discuss. But I do want to do that to cover the main points for you so that you can write a paper. The third paper is about David Foster Wallace, about this essay, the TV and U.S. fiction essay, okay, that we're going to talk about right now. And then a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again, which hopefully you've begun reading by this point. You will address in more detail. You will address more detail in the final paper, the fourth paper, alongside Graeber, which is the fourth book you'll read. It's the one with the pink cover. So first of all, a little bit of commentary about David Foster Wallace. He wrote in the 90s, committed suicide, wrote fiction, nonfiction, wrote a lot of good stuff. He has a very kind of unique style. You noted that very much in contrast to C.S. Lewis. I usually just say he's all over the place. I mean, that's what it feels like when you're reading it. He is much more about free association. He throws in a lot of footnotes. He uses a lot of examples. He uses a lot of description. And he doesn't argue like Lewis argues, as we talked about, with these stair-step analogy of Lewis's argument, setting up options and then kind of eliminating those options. David Foster Wallace doesn't go about things that way. In fact, if you noted, I think it's about halfway into the essay, he says, "I do have a thesis," right? And I think he means that as a kind of joke because he knows that normally you should at least get your thesis out of the way, early on in the piece, right? So TV and U.S. fiction begins on page, where are we at? Sorry, oh gosh. Begins on page 21. He says, "I have a thesis," by about page 50. So his style of argumentation obviously is a little bit different. And also, he's addressing some things that I did ask you to not consider. So the exigency of this essay in part has to do with what happens when a population of young writers learns how to think and describe while being immersed in a televisual culture. So there's that aspect to it. We don't want to worry about that. There are large portions of the essay that deal specifically with, we'll just say, things that are more literary, that the English majors would be more concerned about, and that we would be more concerned about if we were going in that direction. I am more concerned about, excuse me, for us, what he is saying about television specifically, and even more specifically about irony. And so I want to kind of cover that material, maybe point out some passages for you that you can use. Remember, the paper that you want to write regarding this essay, it's not any different than C.S. Lewis, the way I had you do that. You want to consider a couple passages that have some meat to them. You want to figure out what he's trying to say, what some of the main arguments are, and then you're going to respond. You want to respond, and you're kind of either agreeing with him, you're disagreeing with him, you're doing both, you agree and disagree. You might want to add something to the passage to help flesh it out, to help make sense of it, and you might want to add another source. I didn't say it was required, but that's just a really good trick that I've learned. If you add something in, it gives you more to consider, more material to hash through. So, with these 3-page papers, which are very short, you should feel like you don't have enough space. Okay, and I'm okay with you going over 3 pages, but and you should feel that pressure. Like I can't get what I want said in 3 pages because there is a lot to it. There's a lot of stuff here. So, and then I had you write some questions about this essay. So I think I'm going to kind of answer those, and I will, after I'm done with those C.S. Lewis papers, which I promise will be done before you come back from spring break, I will also give you credit for those questions, and those will go into a participation part of your grade. So, okay. So I asked you, to explain the concept of average as a fiction, all right? Now, to really understand what we're talking about there, we have to kind of understand this whole thing about what television is. And he goes through pretty well, he defines what television is on page 24. So there he discusses that when we think we're looking at television as a window into reality, right, he says, no, it's not a window into reality. It's that's an illusion. What it actually is on page 24, and he goes through, 6 or 8 things that separate the reader from reality. One is the fact, let's see, I'm on the top of page 24. One is the fact that we're voyeurs here at all. He says that's an illusion. We're not actually looking at someone who doesn't know we're there. That's the definition of what a voyeur is. We're looking at a pre-planned, pre-programmed, completely scripted moment that is scripted there by the actors, by the producers, by the television crew, etc. And that this is a complete fiction. It's not like a window into reality, right? I think we all know this because of reality television. We think that this is the real thing, but it's mostly a drama that's scripted. He goes through a whole bunch of other little things, even to the point where, hey, this is a piece of furniture. It's not a window looking out onto a park or something. It is a piece of furniture that you're looking at. And so television, so one of the big things that, he wants to talk about here is the fact that we immerse ourselves in this, that we do so, a great deal, right? And so the exigency of the television part to this is what does it mean to immerse ourselves into something that is what does it mean to be a part of something and to watch something so much, right? And to take so much time doing it. And he even says, but we know we hate it, right? But we still do it anyway. And why is that if we hate it so much? And I would like to add on to that, for you all to chew on as well, just add on mobile technology, just add on the internet, just add on your cell phones, right? That gives you another avenue in your paper, is to maybe even apply a lot of what David Foster Wallace says here to our cell phones, our mobile technology, right? He's writing back in the 90s. He didn't even see that coming. I mean, he wasn't writing about that, but interestingly, all of it still applies, very much so. Or if you don't think it applies, then argue that. Argue some aspect that is dated, that doesn't quite apply or seem to fit. I think that'd be a good way of writing a paper too. So if you go to page 21, so on page 24, he kind of defines what television is and sets up one of the big points here, that it is an illusion. All right, so we are immersing ourselves in an illusion constantly. Part 2, then, he goes into this idea of what average is, okay? And that's on page 22. And the main point here is to remember that what television's function is to do one thing, okay? What do you think that thing is? To sell, right? To sell product, okay? They're not doing it because they like us, because they think we're nice people, or they want to make us laugh and all that. Of course they want to make us laugh, because if we're laughing, we're going to watch the show. We're going to be entertained. We're going to, buy in. So as part of that, what television does, according to Dave Foster Wallace, is create this fiction of normality. And what television does is they do a lot of marketing research to figure out what most of the people are going to like, okay? They don't just throw shows, right? Movies, television, these things are gigantic investments by these companies, and they want to make sure that whatever they're selling is going to reach the most and appeal to the most amount of people. And so you take a look at like the Huxtables, all right, which was the sitcom back from the 90s about the African American family. Bill Cosby was the father, right? Well, you probably didn't see it, but it was really big, and they were kind of created as an average family, well-to-do, educated, had a nice house, the whole thing. And so what David Foster Wallace wants us to remember is that when we are given these things that are normal or average, that they're actually constructions of what we would like to see based on research. So all that means is we would like to see a family that looks like this. We would like to see a married couple that looks like that, or a family that looks like this. It's all a complete construction based on demographics. So average, the concept of average, of normal, of real, okay, it is only a fabricated concept that is used to sell more TV, used to sell more advertisements, used to suck us in, okay. So television, in a sense, is not our friend, in that we have to be kind of aware, like we do with anything, that something's being sold to us, okay? And that's his point with what average is, with what normal is. Okay, so he says there at the first full paragraph, page 22, at the bottom, there's a lot of money at stake, after all, and television owns the best demographers applied social science has to offer. And these researchers can determine precisely what Americans in the 90s see, what we as an audience want to see ourselves as. What do we want to see? What do we want to view? What do we think reality looks like? They're going to just feed that to us. Television from the surface on down is about desire, and that's what TV is going to give us. Okay. The concept of average is a fiction, which is used to sell. That's probably the quickest way of talking about average. So, all right. So, I asked what what irony is, or how David Foster Wallace discusses irony in terms of this essay. But first we have 3 questions that he asks on page. Maybe you caught it on the top of page 30. He asks these 3 questions. The 3 questions I asked you to answer. And those questions are, as David Foster Wallace says, what exactly is it about televisual culture that we hate so much? Why are we so immersed in it if we hate it so? What implications are there in our sustained voluntary immersion in something that we hate? A lot going on there. And to help answer some of those questions, I wanted to go to pages, if you follow along with me. Long pause, right? This is not a television show. This is real, right? Sorry, I had it listed. Let's go to page 35 in the essay. 35, 36, 37 do a lot of work here. For me, a lot of good work kind of explaining the dynamics of the viewer and of television and of irony, because irony is part of the answer to all of this as well. And so so I'll just kind of touch on it briefly, and you can dig more deeply into those examples there. But I would love to hear all of you answer these questions face to face. But since we're not, I will just go ahead and answer those questions. But the idea, so you remember this whole Joe Briefcase analogy. Joe Briefcase is the average viewer, the guy who comes home from work, or woman who comes home from work and sits down and turns the TV on, right? Wants to be entertained. And he kind of goes into the dynamic of what that looks like, what that relationship looks like between Joe Briefcase and the television show, the TV. And irony plays a part in that. Basically, the bit about irony is the tool that television uses to make Joe Briefcase feel like he's part of the joke, okay? Irony, at its kind of most simple, is our ability to point out contradictions in what is supposed to be and what actually is, all right? That's called irony. And our ability to detect irony is actually a really good thing because it helps us to expose power and manipulation and deception, right? So it's like irony might be, in that case, something that looks like a professor who says to his students, I think it's terrible if you come late to class. And that professor is constantly late. Okay, that's ironic, right? So your ability to detect that tension, all right, that hypocrisy makes you more able to understand where power is abusing its authority, okay, in a sense, right? And if your employer were doing something similar, or if your politicians were doing something like that, telling us one thing, doing another, that's irony. And so irony on the one hand is a really great thing. David Foster Wallace talks about irony in terms of television and discussing that, hey, look, we often are asked to be able to detect irony in our television programs and the humor of them because it makes me feel, that makes the viewer feel a part of the action. Okay, so let's look at maybe a passage. Bottom of page 35, he says, the tension between what's said and what's seen is irony's whole sales territory. Classic televisual irony works via the conflicting juxtaposition of pictures and sound. What's seen undercuts what's said. So that's the bit about what irony is and how it fits. However, let's find a bit with Joe Briefcase. And there's a bit of a cycle that happens as well, where Joe Briefcase uses irony to get the joke. And so he feels superior because he's getting the joke, which encourages him to go to television to be a part of this kind of fake community. And that communal, that feeling of being part of that fakeness, or sorry, the appeal of joining a community makes him want to continue that community, which pulls him away from actual community, which makes him less apt to want to go onto the subway to deal with real people, right? Real people are much more messy and complicated. And so better to just go back to television and start this spiral that goes, right, to the point of the stereotypical person just sucked into TV and doing nothing else, right? But being sucked into TV, I guess that's the same critique of video games that came out of the 90s as well. And so that kind of answers, a lot of the questions. We hate television because it's not real. We know we're being sold something, but we buy into it because it's entertaining. And then the consequences of sustained immersion ultimately is a detachment from community and from communication, from being able to communicate with real people. Okay. So that's a lot of 35, 36, and 37, and I want to point out a couple more passages for you to chew on for your papers. That bit on page 49, where I do have a thesis, is very important, obviously, a paragraph there. He says, I want to persuade you that irony, poker-faced silence, and fear of ridicule are distinctive of those features of contemporary U.S. culture that enjoy any significant relation to the television whose weird, pretty hand has my generation by the throat. I'm going to argue that irony and ridicule are entertaining and effective, and that at the same time they are agents of a great despair and stasis in U.S. culture and fiction writers, but we don't want to worry about fiction writers. Okay? So then after that, we get into a little bit more of some of the literary stuff, but not all of it. If you look at page 54, you get into a bit about advertising, individualism, and a sense of belonging. So that's on page 54 and 55. If you look at 56, also really useful stuff there, especially regarding the Joe Briefcase analogy and what he means about what it is to get sucked into TV. Then another page 60. I'm going to say page 60 is a little bit about a commercial about Pepsi. I don't know if we're really going to worry about that right now. All right, and so, okay, really quick, page 65, about halfway down, there's another statement there about irony and its use. Okay, so Though, okay, so if I were going to write a paper, I would um, write the paper um, based on some of those passages that I pointed out. You have a very foundational understanding of the main argument and what he's talking about, hopefully. And if you don't, please email me. I'm more than happy to talk, you know, about it before you start writing your papers. So, according to our syllabus, which I have here somewhere, you all are off for next week for spring break. So stay out of trouble, or don't stay in trouble. That's spring break, and then when we get back, we're going to want to think about the peer review. The rough draft and the peer review for this third paper. Okay, so that means on March 29th, we'll do another. Either we'll be in class together, although I kind of doubt that, but absent any medical miracles, we'll be doing our peer review virtually on March 29th, which means you have to have a complete 3-page peer review or 3-page rough draft completed for this paper. Okay, so that means 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks, right? It's March 15th. That's about 2 weeks from today. So be ready. Okay, start emailing me. I don't really have a spring break, so I'll still be working and available to talk to you by email or phone if you want. Again, I'm not gone. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still here. So if you're confused or concerned, please email me. And I've been responding to those emails and getting answers back to you. Where are we going from here? So I have a lot of grading to do, obviously, in the next week. You'll have your C.S. Lewis papers back to you with comments. You'll have an idea of what your participation grade is, and that will be based on our in-class work that we've done up until the virtual stuff, and then if you've done your virtual homework as well. And then know that your participation grade is can go up or down. It's just kind of a midterm starting point. We're a little bit past midterm, but it's kind of the mid-semester starting point that can go up or down. So up to what you do the rest of the semester. Next big essay, a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. Okay, so that's the one. That's the title essay of this collection of essays, and it starts. The last essay on page 256. I have asked you already to begin that essay because I don't want you to be slammed with work. But what I would do is definitely have the, say first 50 pages. It's about 100 pages. So maybe read half the essay. Well, I asked you to read half the essay by now. And it would be nice if you have finished the essay by the time that you have your rough draft completed as well. But technically, we will not discuss this essay until the Tuesday following the rough draft, okay, of paper 3. So that gets us into like April 3rd. I'd like you to have this entire essay completed, completely read, okay? And then this essay, and then another essay by George Orwell, which I'll give to you sometime soon, as well as the Graeber, certain selections. We're not going to get to the whole book. It's under my computer. I'm not going to grab it. Certain selections from that will round out the course and your final paper. The final paper we'll get into, but basically no surprises. The final paper is very much like what you're doing so far with Lewis and Dave Foster Wallace. I'm just asking you to juggle a lot more by the final paper. There's no final exam in the class, so all of your work is going into reading and writing. That's what a composition class is. So I hope you all are doing well. Gosh, I really, really am sorry that I'm not seeing you face to face. I was having a lot of fun with you all. So I hope you hang in there. Again, please feel free. Email me if you want to talk. I can give you my phone number and we can chat. I also text with students if you'd rather do that. Whatever you want to do. And have fun spring break. And that's about it. So take care. I will post another virtual class the Tuesday you all get back. So we'll just kind of take it from there. So, but do occasionally check in to see if I've posted any announcements in the class during spring break if you have a chance. So, okay, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.